Wanted to go through a few things before we get into the meeting and everything here. Rate study meeting will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock here at City Hall. The rate study that's determining the rates for the next 4 years, giving them the information that we have. So next council meeting I'll have information on that for you. Delinquents, there are no delinquents. And the major fund, the major fund group I left laying on with my desk. So if anyone wants them, I'll be one of that email.
You know, past couple of months or so, I've had Jenna work with Denise to proactively contact people who are late paying their bill, trying to keep them off of the shut-off list and all of that. And it seems to me as though that's having a positive impact. I mean, I know we've had shut-off lists in the 40s, and we seem to be looking at shut-off lists in the 20s now. Are you hearing this from distribution?
Yeah, we had 35 today, though.
Is that right?
Yeah, but, I think it has helped. Some, so... It's not hurting.
Hey, Cletus, and what time is that meeting tomorrow?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock here. I'm going to start talking about wastewater. Our industrial inspections, and I'm going to read this word for word, and then we'll talk a little bit, are currently underway within the city of Heath. 5 industries within the city are inspected yearly for compliance to the Heath wastewater plant. Those plants are Ampiset Corporation, Ashland, Kaiser, WS Packaging, Samuel Strapping Systems, and Port Authority. Most industries produce some wet waste, although recent trends minimize production or recycle such waste within the production process. However, many industries remain dependent on process that produce wastewaters. Some companies choose to incorporate pretreatment facilities to meet the city's wastewater requirements. So tomorrow, I think we have 3 industries we're doing. We will go in when we survey them. We just sometimes we tour the facility. Sometimes we ask questions about the facility, if it changed anything, any kind of processes or anything like that, because we want to know ahead of time if there's something coming into the wastewater plant that we're going to have a hard time treating. Also, new industries that come into the cities. I know there's a couple things that I'll mention here later where we're having a couple of new smaller facilities coming in. We will survey them and see if they need to be permitted. These companies here that I mentioned are permitted. Those companies are looked at every year to see what their waste streams are and make sure that they comply with our standards that are in our codified ordinances.
Hey John, how about the place, the beer place out there? Do they have much waste or anything like that?
They do have some, but they fall under the Port Authority's permit.
Okay.
So comes through their system to the test location.
So they are permitted in a roundabout way. So yeah, they are.
I was wondering if they, had a separate, facilities and stuff,
Yeah. The new businesses are. Let's see. We're talking about that. Let's just go on and I'll tell you about them here in a minute shortly. Let's go ahead to number 2, bioassay completed. A bioassay test determines the relative strength of a substance by comparing its effects on a test organism with that of a standard preparation. Effluent from our municipal wastewater discharges are tested. These tests are a method of biomonitoring wastewater toxicity. Basically what we're doing, we have to do this once a year. We go in and they take samples of our effluent. Then they introduce these I have listed below, water fleas, they could fathead minnows, shiners, shrimp, or silver sides. Depending on the area that you live in, those are the organisms that they use in the water. And they'll actually introduce these organisms into the water, they'll see if our wastewater has any effect on their growth, or if it kills them, or if they can reproduce in it, or whatever they can do.
They grow to 3 foot long.
They have 3 legs or something like that. But then that's evaluated, and then but I wanted to let everyone know that we passed that with flying colors. I think Dan Stofan was telling me, actually, overall, it was probably one of the best tests that we've ever had with the outcome of that. So, wanted to let you know that was.
Now, how long do they let these organisms live in there before they come back and test?
I don't know the exact times. I think it depends on the organism. But I know the test goes on, what, Nick, for about a week or so? When you say, I'm guessing. I know I would say at least a week. It may be longer than that. I don't know particularly
72
myself.
hours.
That'd be a good question I'm sorry.
72 hours.
72 hours?
22 is 24.
Okay. I'd have to ask from our lab guy. He's more familiar with that. We don't do this test. We send this to an outside lab, and an outside lab does it. So, chlorine treatment near completion. The wastewater plant will discontinue treatment with chlorine for the 2014 season on October 31st, 2014. That is what's recommended by the EPA. We chlorinate the waters that are discharged water, and then we dechlorinate it and discharge it to the rivers, to the South Fork of the Licking River. So that's done during a certain period of time when people are more apt to be in the rivers fishing and so forth. So that's why we chlorinate our effluent.
So is this something that you've always ceased?
We've always done it. Yeah. So just wanted to let everyone know that we're ending our chlorine treatment period. So when do we normally start that, Nick? May?
I think it's May.
Yeah.
April, May, I can never remember.
I presume that's on presumption that there's no secondary contact during winter? Water's too cold?
As far as
It's just where our permit.
that's what our permit requires us to do. I mean, that's what the EPA requires us to do. I don't know. We have to keep track of testing internally for bacteria and so forth. We can't put them out. So we're constantly monitoring for that, but we don't do a total kill.
I was just curious if you watched it.
Item number 4, the press. Recently repairs have been made to press polymer pumps and belt press switch. Sludge hauling has been completed for the 2014 season, with 550 wet tons recently being removed from the sludge barn. 550 wet tons. We just had that hauled out. If you want to know cost on that, the figure they charge us about $19 per wet ton to remove it from the sludge barn.
Can we get some new feathers for that process?
We currently don't bid it. It's something that we can bid. It has never been bid down there. We do bid the lime sludge hauling, but we haven't bid this in a while.
This isn't the one that couldn't get bids on?
No, we can bid bids on this.
That was the lime sludge.
Okay. That was the lime sludge that we did bids on. The company that we use has always done a pretty good job for us. We've talked about bidding it. The price hasn't really went up a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. So
I think the big thing with the bid on that is the farmland that they're permitted to put on. If that cuts down on who can bid it, because there's only certain farmland, because it's all going to be tested and everything, and if you bid it out to another company, then they might have to haul it farther or go through more testing.
they have to get the land approved.
Right.
The company that's doing it gets the land approved, and it does involve a little bit more work and stuff to get the approval. But it's something that we could do. That's something that we could look at. I've kicked it around many times.
Is it a permit process as well?
Mm-hmm.
By the state?
By the state.
It does complicate it.
It makes it more complicated. Number 5, we recently flushed lines behind Staples with large amounts of grease buildup. We will be sending notification to restaurants in the area to clean oil and grease separators. Process on their oil and grease, we have a FOG program, which is fats, oils, and grease, and I've explained this before to everybody. We have invoices that they send us if things are done on a routine basis. We kind of keep track of who's cleaning their oil and grease separators. However, we have checked a couple of these and we found out that they need to be done on a more frequent basis. Nick, you can explain how many feet or how many feet of lines that we just recently cleaned?
931.
931 foot of lines recently.
And 4 meters.
4 meters. So,
This is behind Staples. That the line. Okay.
it's tied in with the restaurant there locally.
I'm sorry. What? What restaurants we talking about? What restaurants tie into that line?
Several do, but one that we've had problems with in the past. I've mentioned them dumping some grease down storm sewer. This.
Okay.
And we had a backup on the storm sewer, and then we found grease.
Yeah.
That's how we found that. So that's the one where we'll be approaching them and talking with them more on their control of their grease traps.
Okay.
So.
Appropriate disposal. Appropriate disposal.
Yeah, we've already done that, but now.
Is this the line that goes over by the post office?
Yes.
Yeah. Does it flow from that area to like 30th Street? How does that flow?
It flows north, and then it when it gets behind the post office, it goes south.
East.
Okay.
It's because they don't follow the grease if they're treated.
Well,
Or they don't pay to have
sometimes,
the grease traps cleaned down.
yeah, sometimes you can get people to take it, and they'll just take it off their hands. Most of the time, they charge around here, and it can be up to $300 a pop every time they come in and clean the grease
Is that
trap.
include North? Does that include the city North?
I don't know what they're.
They have a program to accept it in their digesters.
They do accept it. We don't accept it. We can. That's the next step.
Schedule for that?
Yeah. We have a schedule for that. We can. What we'll do is we'll give them an ultimatum. Either they get it cleaned and send us an invoice, or we will have it cleaned for them and send them to their place.
Seems to me like our fund should see if there are possible clean grease trap.
That's in our ordinances. We can't find that.
Well, aren't they supposed to keep records of when they get it
Yes.
cleaned?
They're supposed to send them to us. They're supposed to send them to us. When a restaurant cleans their grease trap, we get a copy of it, so we can keep tabs on every restaurant and how they're done.
And the first thing they said, well, yes, we had it done. So then you got to contact the company that supposedly had it done and find out if there's any bill of ladings that got not shipped to us and this and that. And the other. It takes a while to pin them down to, yeah, they weren't doing it, or not as often as they should have been. It just
Because
takes a little longer.
if the company's writing a false that they turned it out, they're going to pay us taxes on that money they earned.
Some companies, some restaurants choose to have the company that pumped it out send the information to them, and then they pass it on to us, and then some just have them send it directly to us. It gets a lot to keep track of.
It gets involved.
Yeah.
But I would say that the companies that are creating the problem don't have a corporate office somewhere in Timbuktu.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a better restaurant. What's that?
We just create a policy citywide. How do we want it to be done?
We do.
We have a fall program. That's
They
awesome.
don't, because they don't comply.
That's what we're describing. That's the process that we're going
They're
through.
chasing these people down for.
We don't chase them down. We know where they're at. We know where they're at. But
You're telling me it's complicated. You're telling me it's.
It's time consuming.
Well, how do we mitigate the time consumption?
we have a very good fall program, and I'll be more than glad to give you the book on it. And everything
There we
in
go.
there, everything in there explains exactly how the grease has to be removed, how they have to send us invoices, how we go around and inspect them yearly,
Yeah.
and all that's done. But still, you have to make sure that the grease is being removed from the separator. I mean, we can't stand there and watch them all the time. And then sometimes they have heavier amounts of grease depending on what they're cooking, how much people are in there. So the amount that they sometimes have to be pumped has to be reorganized with them. That's what we're going to do with this particular restaurant. They may have to come in and have it cleaned more often because they're having more of a problem with grease overflowing into our veins. So that's the next step, is we'll say that it has to be done on a more frequent basis. And then if it's not, and they are sending us that, well, then we have the ability to find them. We have the ability to pump it ourselves and send them a bill. And if we pump it ourselves and send them a bill, it'll be a lot more than what they could have just gotten someone else to do it.
Sure.
So yeah, we're very specific what we do, and this is not new. I mean, this is stuff we've been dealing with.
Don't dump it in a storm sewer.
Yeah. Of course, they did. People at Park National Bank said they did. So that was an interesting comment.
Nick, how do you deal with cleaning the grease out of the line like that?
We use the vac truck and stick the vac tube down in the manhole. And then from that same manhole, we run the jet machine, the jet hose, up the line. So that everything that comes downstream that breaks loose, all the grease and stuff gets sucked up in
And
the
you're
filter.
sucking it up into that kind of. I see.
Okay, that pretty much covers.
If you're able to send more out, there you go. That's my $1 million idea right there.
what's
Don't
good-
anybody take it.
Yeah, and what's really surprising, I mean, it's not just
A heated jet line. I want to inform everyone, this is not just restaurants. I mean, this is residential areas.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
that we have a lot of problems. People have we put out flyers before, talk to different peoples and areas, don't just, dump your grease down the drain, it needs to be taken care of or wrapped up and put in the trash or whatever. We don't want it down the drain. So,
Isn't the nickname Greenbrier Greasebrier?
that's
It's a heavy grease laden subdivision. For whatever reason.
It's a lot of grease and green line. Nick knows firsthand on
Well,
it.
Rentals, people that rent are less apt to worry about whether the grease is going to get clogged up or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on wastewater?
What penalty is there if somebody doesn't provide you with record keeping or what their records?
I think we have the ability, we'll give them, there's certain steps that we go through. Like, we'll contact them or we stop in and see them. And then, I don't know exactly how much the penalty is, but we do have the ability to penalize them and fine them if they don't give us the information.
And isn't there like a reporting period where you need to report every 3 months or every so often?
It's the reporting period is every restaurant has their own reporting period. Some restaurants can get by with twice a year. Some restaurants can do quarterly. Some restaurants have to do it, several times a month. So every restaurant is on their own little deal.
A lot of that has to do with the size of their grease interceptor.
Right. Some restaurants have huge interceptors. Some restaurants just have a small grease interceptor under their sink.
And there's been times when we get the proper paperwork and it looks like it's getting cleaned out routinely, but there's still a problem. And we've had to actually go and inspect, when they clean it out and inspect it. And Dan has found some that's not working properly and made them repair.
We had a big repair at Walmart.
Yeah.
it wasn't to our specs, the way we wanted it. And Walmart has a policy there that they can go back after construction, within 9 years after the construction, on anything that's put in their buildings. And the gentleman had to come back and redo that whole grease intercept. So, we try to keep tabs as much as we can on everything. I think the amount of grease coming in the wastewater plant has improved immensely, hasn't it, man? I mean, I'm talking immensely over the last 3 or 4 years. And also, newer restaurants have a bit more strict restrictions. The older restaurants that have been in there for a while, they still fall kind of grandfathered in with what they have. We don't make them change things, but we make them do the frequency of cleaning them out more often. So,
I think what Ronnie's saying, though, is if there aren't clearly identified consequences, they're less likely to be compliant. Is that kind of what your point is? It's like, if you don't do X, we're going to do Y.
No, not that so much as putting the monkey on their back as far as the record, providing the records.
Right.
They should be the ones jumping through their butts to get the records into you that, yes, we got this done.
And we do.
Instead of y'all having to chase down a different.
Well, like Nick said, they'll comply, but then we still find that there's a lot of grease in that line. So that means we need to go back to them and say, hey, look, you're complying, but you need to add some extra cleanout periods. And next public service meeting, I'll bring in the fog book, and you guys can kind of glance through it, and it states everything in there. In fact, if you really want to, I don't have to do that. Just go online, City of Heath, and there's a fog. You click on the fog program, and it's online. So it'll tell you the consequences, it'll tell you the fines, and everything. So I didn't even think about that, but it is online.
And every time you get a new manager, it's a whole new training.
That's another thing.
That's the last
And that's a
thing
killer.
we're training.
I tell you what, that's exactly true. And these restaurants they change managers like you wouldn't believe. So, any other questions on this? Get in the water. Jeff, I'll go ahead and jump to 3. I have a complete review of the industrial utility drawings. Well, we all have looked at the industrial. Whenever I get new companies coming in, Nick will review them, I'll review them, John Appleman reviews them, and then we all sit down and we decide whether or not the size of line is proper, what kind of meter they're going to need in that facility, where they're going to tap onto the sewer at, how they're going to tap on. We review all drawings of new. The ones that we just completed was Mistras is a company that will be building a new building, and then ABY is a building that's going up across from Inglefield Oil and James Parkway. Mistras is at the corner of Kaiser Drive and James Parkway. Mistras is right now is renting room off of Kaiser Aluminum. And this is kind of a good thing because then they won't fall under Kaiser's permitting. And they'll have their own permitting, which I think sometimes gives the Kaiser a little bit of headaches. So.
Do they have, these kind of businesses require pre-treatment?
Some businesses do. When we go in and we survey them, we will survey these new companies and we will determine from the survey of what they're discharging on whether they're going to need to have pre-treatment. Ampeset, I don't know if you're familiar with Ampeset out on James Parkway. We made them put in pre-treatment at that facility, and things are
Much better.
How about these two?
the 2 new ones. When they go in, they will fill out a form.
Oh, they don't know ahead of time?
Why wouldn't you have that?
Well, ABY, we pretty much know what they are. ABY is we know what their production is. We don't anticipate any kind of permitting from them. Mistras, they would definitely probably be permitted. We know that because of what they've had at the Kaiser Aluminum. But it's kind of hard to
talk to people and survey them before they're even in the building and they're up under construction.
The planning commission's process, when we're getting those drawings and everything for final review, and they're going to every department head where they are, I guess I've made a bad assumption of pre-treatment is kind of part of your sign off.
When I sign off on that,
Not only on the size of the line and everything else.
there's nothing on what waste streams they're going to have or anything like that. There's nothing that's involved.
Should we amend that?
It might not be a bad idea to stick something in there.
And I guess where logic would say, while a building is being built, if we're going to require a pre-treatment aspect, whatever that, whatever scope that may be, that if we're going to require a pre-treatment process of that business, while the initial construction is taking place, it's probably the most convenient time for that pre-treatment process to be incorporated into the building's plans and then built out.
That's something that can be looked at. I'm assuming that John Roth, that's in our ordinances.
Yeah.
In our ordinances is every level, BOD levels, any kind of levels that take place that have to be met is in our codified ordinances under pre-treatment. I would assume that when a company comes in to John Groff, that he tells this company that those are that would be a good question for John.
You may want to do is to double check them.
It's in our codified ordinances.
Yeah, because there's two ways to handle it. You can either have the industry come in and then see what they're sending to them, and then say, okay, you're going to need a pre-treatment. Or you can talk to the business and say, what are you going to send to us? And if they just, no, flat out, it's going to be A, B, and C, and you want that taken out, you say, okay, well then we're going to need a pre-treatment process for you as you're designing your building, as you're putting all that together. Incorporate in some sort of a pre-treatment process. Again, to me, it would seem as though.
Well, I guess my question is then to you is I assume that that's being taken care of through John Groff when they apply, because it's in our codified ordinances of what we are allowed. Every parameter is allowed that they're allowed to send down to the wastewater plant. Those are our rules. Those are our regulations. When a company comes in, I assume that John Groff is letting that person know that these are what has to be met and kept as far as meeting our requirements. I think it's a good question for him. When a prospective industry comes in, when they're designing the building and everything, does he let the industry know what our ordinances say on that? Maybe we do.
Experienced the industry and required that in John Groff really up front.
Yeah.
In my experience, that's one of their decision points.
I would think that would be a decision before a company would even move into our town.
Certainly affects the cost.
Definitely, they would look at that. I mean, every town has it. Every town has a pre-treatment or what they have to meet. But if they aren't, that's something I can talk over with John Groff and let him know that is that something that's being brought up before? Because when we sat down and survey these people, when we sat down with the manager of the company and stuff before they start production and stuff, we will say this is what you have to meet, and if you do not meet this, then you're breaking our ordinances and you can't discharge that. Then you're going to have to put in some kind of pre-treatment, or you're going to have to do this or that. But most companies check into that, I would think.
Let's assume let's be proactive just for your benefit here.
And again, what John's saying is that may be taking place today. So that's just a simple question we need to ask. Okay, I'll talk.
I know it doesn't go up in plan reviews. We don't. That's not one of them.
No.
When it's given to me, I'm looking at the plan review too. I'm looking at like I said, the size of the water line, where it's coming from, where they're going to tap, what size of the building it is. I'm looking at that kind of aspect of it. But that's a good question. I don't mind checking into that. Make sure that
Probably should be something to check here in plan review.
I would think
And
plan
the larger
review would
cities
have.
have engineers
I'll be quite honest with you. We don't have a lot of industry. This here recently is the most industry that we've had actually coming in for plan review.
But if things start to ramp up like we're hoping and praying they are.
Sure.
Does your consulting engineer and retainer have the skills to review that for you?
Yes. We'll check into it.
If I was building,
It's just a simple question we need to ask.
if I
We'll check
was a
into it.
company owner and building, and I got my building all done, and I was all happy, and the city came in and told me I had to tear up and do something else, I would not be real happy with my architect and my planner.
No, I wouldn't be happy with everybody within the facility because everybody knows in that plant
It's
what
Greek,
they
it's
what,
Greek to us, but it's not Greek to them.
well, what they discharge. There's someone in that facility that should know what they got to meet to meet our sewer requirements. And I wouldn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in a building and all that if I couldn't meet the industrial discharges.
But 9 out of 10, you're right.
So,
Here's the exception.
You wouldn't buy a lot and build a house in the city and then build a chicken coop and be upset because the city told you had to tear down the chicken coop. I mean, you knew when you bought the property and
that had to be 1,200 square feet
Yeah.
minimum in a residential home in the city of Heath. So if you build a 900 square foot home and then we go back and we check it and it's not 1,200, I suppose we could do some.
It's not like you're talking from the spirit.
But yeah, just to kind of move on. I'll check with John Brock and make sure that these people are giving us at the beginning at the plan.
Oh, you have some chicken coop business.
Slow right now.
Okay, we have been looking at the possibility of purchasing a valve turning tool. This is something that John Appleman has been talking with me a lot. This tool would allow the distribution crew to turn more valves in a quicker period of time, keeping them mobile and being able to be useful if we have a main break, to assure that valve's going to shut down. A lot of valves have to be exercised on a routine basis in order to operate properly. So this would help with that. I had a couple pictures here on the first page. It shows a valve turning tool that we recently had demonstrated to us down on Oberlin Drive. It's a nice unit. Unfortunately, it's a very expensive unit. This unit can also be used for the grant through the Bureau of Workers' Compensation for possible injuries. They would give up to $40,000. However, our fire department is applying for that.
Yeah.
So that then I asked the gentleman if we went ahead and applied for it. He said, well, then you would split the money. Fire department would get $20,000. The valve turning tool would get $20,000. So basically, I do not want to apply for some kind of grant that's going to keep our fire department from getting what I know that Mark Huggins has been talking so much about in some of my department head and the department head meetings. So,
Well, I guess what I know as a valve turning tool is a steel rod with a bell down at the bottom of it and a handle on the top, and you put the rod down the tube to the valve, and you put it on the head of the valve, and you turn the valve.
We've got one, but did you see this? It's a lot more stable. It has some kind of torque in it so it won't apply too much pressure. It's just quicker, easier to use.
What's the price tag?
Well, that unit there is $40,000. Now that also has
steel rods, man.
that also has a hydro excavator on it. I'm not saying this is what we're getting.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that this was demonstrated to us. You can get just a unit that goes on the back of the hitch, on the hitch that hooks onto the truck, onto the Reese hitch. I think it's around $11,000 or $12,000.
We don't currently have any valve turning equipment. I thought we bought something years ago for $79 and places like that and everything. That was
You don't. You have basically kind of like a pipe threader that hooks onto what the mayor's talking about, and it hooks on over the top of the nut, and then you gotta hope there's no kind of torque kick out or anything like that. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 people out when it makes around that they can't catch. You know, I mean, in other words, if it doesn't move that valve head, that nut on that valve, it can clear all 3 of the guys out in about one whack if the guy holds on to the
I thought we bought I actually thought we bought a machine. Like
there is.
They
They do have one that they've had for years. There's been some issues with it because the way it's designed. If you look at this one, see how this arm comes out and can maneuver in different areas. Mm-hmm. The one that they have has it's just connected right onto the trailer, and you got to back the trailer up and maneuver it right over top of this valve box. And I mean, they've used it. I don't know how many years ago they bought that.
It's
I mean, it's still
convenient unless the valve's right in the middle of the street.
Yes. It's just very hard to use. So I'm just looking into this. This is nothing that I'm saying that we're going to buy, but it is, you know, when I saw it demonstrated, they came in and demonstrated, it was very nice. It was quick to use. You could pull it out quick. There's, you know, one guy can handle it without, you know, having consequences from possibly, you know, the turning. I don't know if you can envision what that one valve turning tool is, but it's for harder to get to places. The one that works on the trailer does work good if you can get the trailer maneuvered over top of the valve.
Are there any issues in winter with ice on roads where you can be standing in ice and trying to turn?
Oh yeah. That's why this would be very nice. You try to turn all your valves in good weather. Yeah. I mean, you know, where there's not ice, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes
when you got to valve the line down on a main brake, and
it's two guys out there trying, or 2 or 3 guys trying to get it down. That's safer than actually using. If you can't use the trailer, that's safer than trying to use the electric valve turning tool that we have. But I mean, we do it. We can do it. This just makes it easier. It makes the guys want to turn them more because it's easier to use. The valve turning process happens more often if it's easier to use and nobody gets hurt and it's not a pain in the butt to try to get over top of the valve. So that's the advantages. It's something to look at. Something to look at. Number 2, effluent valve. Recent repairs are being made to an existing effluent valve. This valve allows for proper amounts of water to be filtered to the filter. This one in the mesh net that we're working on one down at the water plant and repairing that. I talked about utility drawings in the Mistras and Abbey and ABY leasing companies. Number 4, we're in the process of looking at tank site locations, and we're working with individuals on possibly the procurement of some ground within the area that would service our east side due to the fact that our water tank on the east side is in need of repair and replacement. And we are looking at a concrete tank. It's very similar to the picture that you see below here. That's kind of the way it would look, especially dimension-wise, on top of a higher level, which would give us greater pressure in other areas that we need pressure, but also causes some problems in areas that we don't need additional pressure. These reinforced steel concrete tanks are actually made of 5 different layers. There's like concrete, and then there's metal, and then there's rebar, and then there's additional concrete in these tanks. They're a real good tank, and they're, for the money, they're not bad. If they stay within a certain size, when you have to start making them taller, they become ineffective. Because the steel tank becomes cheaper than a concrete tank. If you have to build it up, the higher you build it up. So that's kind of where we're at on that. But we are talking with some landowners, trying to get easements and the ability to build this tank. But all this has been evaluated through our study that we did, our engineering study, through ADR, which has picked three different site locations for a possible tank. They also weighed the cost involved in concrete tank, steel tank, all the different types of tanks. Also,
an existing utility somewhere?
there's also with Windstream, which we're waiting to hear back from them on that. We've sent some letters and talked to them.
It's in corporate level right now. However, it would be to our benefit to still look for landowners probably versus that, because you're still going to have to get a dual feed easement through the landowner. So that would be a benefit for us to deal with the landowner versus the utility, because the utility now only has one easement in. We're going to add, in the future, we're going to have to at least have two easements. So for us to deal with the landowner at this time would be better than long. Other than that, I really don't have anything else to say. There is one more page on the back that kind of shows an area that we are looking in. This does not necessarily mean this is where that tank's going to go, but we're looking at this area here. It's been proposed for the new tower location. If you look to the right of the picture, that's Linville Road. And over here to the left, which is not shown, would be State Route 13. And your WCLT existing tank lays over in this area here. Dorset Mill Road would be down here. It would be south.
Comes up here.
Misty Meadows is right below. Right. Like I said, this does not necessarily mean this is where we're going, but this is kind of a proposed location, one of the locations that we're looking at.
Are there, you mentioned concrete and steel tanks, are there hybrid versions of that?
The concrete reinforced steel tank is the one that we're really looking at. It's the one that would better fit the type of water, by being used for water storage. There's a lot of different tanks you can use. You can use a steel tank. You can use. They have aqua store tanks, which is what we have. We have two of them now in the city. They're steel that's glass lined. But the concrete reinforced steel tank is double the life of a steel tank normally. Life expectancy.
And less maintenance.
And a lot less maintenance. Main thing is that you want to make sure you keep the concrete sealed and that it's done properly so that you don't have any kind of chipping or anything that takes place on the tank. Both have their pros and cons. If you get on the internet, you look and the concrete tank people are pushinaires, and you get on the internet, the steel tank people are pushinaires, but you got to kind of read between the lines to listen to what the engineers say, and they kind of are leaning us more towards the concrete reinforced steel tanks.
So they don't have to be painted inside?
No. There's a sealer that goes on there. There's a sealer that goes on there that helps seal them up, but they don't have to be. I suppose it would be like a paint, but the concrete tank does have a sealer on it. And that's to help. I was reading some information on it. Somehow the minerals and stuff coming out of the concrete into the waters, you want to make sure that stays sealed. But it doesn't have to be, the sealer doesn't have to be put on anywhere close to the amount of steel tank you're painting.
Okay. Meeting adjourned, 6:15. Thank you.
That's about a third of the way down the river roads. Flyers and doorknobs and stuff for the fire level tonight. And finish that up.